The wind of the Himalayas bites differently. It's sharp, dry, and merciless, the kind that cuts through bone. Centuries ago, when the Gurkhas still ruled their mountain kingdoms with iron devotion, that same wind carried a different sound. The heavy drag of wood, the thud of hammer on stake, and the quiet, fearful breathing of villagers who dared not look away. A man, or sometimes more than one, was about to be raised, not to the heavens, but upon a sharpened pole, left for the vultures and the judgment of gods. It was called impaling, and to the Gurkhas, it wasn't just punishment. It was a sacred message. Betrayal dies loudly. Before the British Empire arrived, Nepal's mountain kingdoms were closed worlds, isolated, proud, bound by duty, and an unshakable sense of loyalty to the crown. The Gurkhas were not just warriors, they were a living code. They trained barefoot on cliff sides, carried knives known as kukris that could cleave bone in one stroke, and believed a soldier's honor was worth more than his life. In such a world, treason, desertion, or spying wasn't just a crime. It was an infection that threatened the entire body of the kingdom. The cure had to be public, unforgettable, and absolute. Impalement was their language of justice, simple, physical, final. The condemned were bound, stripped of rank and identity, and made an example of before all who might be tempted to disobey. The stake itself was carved with precision, sometimes oiled so the body would slide slowly downward, prolonging the agony. Sometimes rough, so that flesh and splinters tangled together. Imagine the setting: a terraced field at dawn, mist hanging low over the green slopes. Soldiers stand in formation, silent as stone. The condemned kneels before a freshly sharpened pole, its tip catching the light like a blade. His hands are tied behind his back, his feet tremble on the damp soil. Around him villagers gather, called by the sound of the war drum. Children cling to their mothers, even the elders avert their eyes. The officer reads the sentence: for betrayal of the king, for the spilling of brothers' blood, for the shame brought upon the regiment. His voice does not shake. The condemned pleads only once, not for mercy, but for a quick death. But impalement offers none. The stake is fixed into the ground, tilted slightly so gravity will take its course. A soldier steps forward, grips the man's shoulders, and the ritual begins. There's no rush, no anger, just grim discipline. Sometimes the stake entered through the abdomen, sometimes between the ribs, and sometimes through the rectum, exiting near the shoulder or mouth. It depended on the crime. What mattered most was visibility. The condemned was hoisted upright, the weight of his own body drawing him further down the pole with every shallow breath. It could take hours, sometimes a full day. And as the sun climbed over the mountains, the lesson spread through every eye that watched. This is what happens when loyalty breaks. Here's the part that turns history on its head. The Gurkhas, whose punishments seem monstrous through modern eyes, were later celebrated as some of the most honorable and disciplined soldiers in the world. When the British East India Company clashed with them in the early 19th century, the British were shocked, not by cruelty, but by courage. They wrote of Gurkha warriors who fought to the last man, wielding their kukris even after being wounded, never surrendering. The same discipline that once enforced obedience through impalement now inspired respect across empires. It's a paradox that haunts historians. How could a people so feared for their brutality also become the embodiment of loyalty and valor? The answer lies not in cruelty, but in control. To the Gurkhas, fear was a tool, harsh, yes, but necessary. The order had to be visible. Loyalty had to be lived, and if betrayed, publicly destroyed. The stake was not just an instrument of death. It was a mirror reflecting the code that held their world together. Across Asia, impalement wasn't unique to the Gurkhas. The Ottomans, the Mughals, and even the rulers of southern India had their own versions, but among the Gurkhas, it took on a sacred tone. The execution ground was sometimes purified before the act. Offerings were made to local deities to cleanse the land afterward. Witnesses described the silence, the absence of mockery or spectacle. It wasn't entertainment, it was ritual. And yet, behind the stoic faces of soldiers, the emotional weight was immense. Gurkha chronicles mention officers who performed impalements in the morning and wept alone at night. Duty demanded it. Humanity suffered it. Fear, after all, doesn't only consume the punished, it scars the punisher too. For villagers, the image never faded. Long after the stakes were taken down, people spoke of ghosts haunting those spots, spirits of men who died upright, their eyes open, still watching. Travelers avoided those paths after sunset. Mothers warned children not to speak ill of the king. Fear lived on as an echo, generation after generation. One documented case from the late 1700s tells of a soldier who deserted his post during a Gurkha campaign in the hills near Kumaon. He was captured 3 days later, half-starved, begging forgiveness. The punishment was immediate. A stake was prepared at the edge of camp. The regiment assembled. No speeches were made. As the man was raised, his body twisting in pain, his own brother, serving in the same unit, was ordered to salute. That salute, steady and unbroken, became legend. Discipline before blood, honor before love. The story spread through every regiment, carved into memory as both warning and pride. This is the shocking heart of the Gurkha paradox. The same system that demanded such merciless order also created soldiers whose loyalty could not be bought, whose courage could not be questioned. In the centuries that followed, British generals would describe Gurkhas as bravest of the brave. But behind that reputation lay generations of training, fear, and sacrifice, enforced by punishments no one dared forget. Today, the stakes are gone. The fields where those punishments once stood are silent except for the wind and the bleating of goats. The Gurkhas now serve in peacekeeping missions, their bravery honored across the world. Few of them speak of the old punishments, but the echoes remain in the discipline that defines them even now. What makes the story unforgettable isn't the gore, it's the contradiction. How fear, wielded with absolute control, can shape not only obedience, but also greatness. How the same culture that once impaled traitors could later raise heroes who stood unshaken in wars far from home. If you stand today in the high valleys of Nepal, where clouds cling to the cliffs and the air smells of pine and earth, you can still feel it, the weight of memory. Not all histories are written in ink. Some are carved in silence, in the gaze of mountains that watch too much.